Hello once again, and welcome to Scholars in a Bar. I'm your host, Dr. Alan Eichelman, Associate Teaching Professor at the University of Southern Mississippi. And as we say at USM, Southern Miss to the top. We are today at Carrollton Station in the Carrollton part of uptown New Orleans. We are at a very old historic bar, and Vince, can you get a kind of a glance at that beautiful bar back there? Yes. Okay, we are with Jeff Levasseur. Jeff is the manager of Carrollton Station. And Jeff, could you tell us a little bit about this wonderful place? Tell us a little about its history, what's happened here in the past, how it served the community, how you're looking forward to the future.
All right, well, appreciate you having me, Al. Thank you very much. So a little bit about the history of Carrollton Station. The building itself was built around the end of the 1890s, right at the turn of the century. It was around the time that the majority of the neighborhood was either working on the construction or the day-to-day operations of the streetcar barn. So this was their reprieve in the hot summers before, air conditioning was a thing. The bar itself was brought in the late 1970s, but the bar originally is from the 1914 era, which is Brunswick, pre-Prohibition. And when Prohibition happened, obviously they couldn't continue to make bars, so that's when they changed it to pool tables and bowling alleys along the same vein. But this is a beautiful bar that we are so fortunate to have with the beautiful craftsmanship, beautiful artwork, and having the mirrors behind it really makes it a homey vibe and a homey feeling, especially when working here. A neighborhood music club is what our name is. And what we do is during the daytime, we take care of our locals, our regulars, when they get off work. When they need the time off of the house, they come here and enjoy themselves. It is a very similar bar to Cheers, where everybody kind of knows each other. We all have conversations across the bar. It's a pretty homey vibe. You would say that the majority of regulars know each other on a first name, if not address basis. But then once the sun goes down, then about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock is when we start to have our events at night. So on Mondays, we'll have open mic singer-songwriter, hosted by O.C. Crow. Then Tuesday, we have trivia, hosted by Asher and Christina. Wednesday nights, we have Think You're Funny, which is an open mic comedy stand-up. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we'll have various shows where there will be a cover, and then we'll turn it into the real music club that we strive to be.
Oh, okay, good. What type of musical groups do you have here?
You got to follow the schedule, because we'll have anything from metal to Americana to Zydeco to funk to brass bands to whoever we think can bring people into the bar and have a good time.
Traditional jazz?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll play it all.
Okay, I always like to hear traditional
We've
jazz.
actually had the Radio Bird, which is the part of the Philharmonic. It's a Philharmonic quartet and so they'll come and play instead of their classical stuff that they normally play. They'll come here and play covers of songs that are pop renditions.
Okay.
So
great.
It's a little reprieve for them as well.
Now, I've noticed also you've got some fairly large screen TVs, a couple of them. One of them in the other room is just mammoth, in matter of fact. And you've got some sporting things on right now.
We are a big Houdat Saints bar. Every Sunday, Monday if we need to, but we're a big Saints bar.
Watched the game last night?
Oh, we were here. I was working for it. Oh yeah, we watched it. At the same time, we had music going, so we had the Saints, the sound on in the front and out back while music was being performed on stage. It was a wild time last night, but it was enjoyable nonetheless.
Yeah.
And then actually it was about 2 weeks ago is when we installed this projector in front of the stage.
Yes.
So that will be set up for the beginning of the Saints football season. And then also I'm going to throw this in there for the beginning of the Rugby World Cup. We'll be able to play some rugby games here as well. Which is,
well, you really have 3 different areas here. You've got the bar area, then you've got the club area where you have the performances and you can watch the games, and then beyond that, you've got a wonderful courtyard.
Yes. It's pretty interesting, the breakdown of this bar, because it only up until about 20 years ago, there wasn't a back door there. And so we've kind of, in the past 2 decades, turned that into what we feel is one of the better patios, not only in the neighborhood, but we feel in the city itself.
Well, I've had a lot of friends that have come to Carrollton Station over the years, and for some reason, this is the first time I have been here, and I walked in and I thought, wow, what a cool place. This is just a really neat place.
Yeah, we strive to make it better every day, a little bit cleaner, a little bit prettier. Never ends, let me tell you. The work never ends, but it is a passion that I thoroughly enjoy, and I love being here every day trying to make this bigger and better.
And a word about Jeff himself, his family has been in Louisiana for basically since almost the founding of Louisiana. And he's an LSU grad who now is come into New Orleans, which I think is the best place in Louisiana.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a little prejudiced that way, but I love this town. So,
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
So, Jeff, it was great talking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I hope, I intend to come here more often now and really enjoy this wonderful establishment.
Yeah. Oh, not to mention we also have wonderful pop-ups that so food-wise, we don't have a set kitchen, but we have a few pop-ups that come in and have rotating menus. So those can also be found on our website and on our social media pages.
Okay.
So our menu is constantly changing. Our acts are constantly changing. So stay up to date on social media and you can follow along and then really see what kind of exciting things are happening over here at Carrollton Station.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. And next we're going to be talking to Dr. Tracey Lamont, who is the director of the Loyola University of New Orleans Institute for Ministry. And I'm very anxious to talk to her and garner some of her ideas relative to the topic of ministry to young adults. Thanks again, Jeff.
Appreciate you, Al.
Okay, yes, and now we are very, very happy to have with us Dr. Tracey Lamont. Dr. Lamont is the director of the Loyola University of New Orleans Institute for Ministry. Occasionally I teach for Tracey, and I've had a great time doing so, working with the graduate students at Loyola. And so I'm going to turn to Tracey right now and say, how are you doing, Tracey?
I'm wonderfully well. How are you doing, Alan?
I'm great. I'm out of the heat.
Yes, exactly.
You got to
nice
explain.
fans.
It's been about 100 degrees every single day here in New Orleans, and we're looking towards more of it coming our way.
That is correct. We got some rain today, so we're grateful for that.
Okay, I think I'm going to call Jeff back. Jeff, how about making us a couple of your old fashions?
All right. Think I can do that for you?
Yes.
Get started. Walk through it.
Yes, well, that involves bourbon, of course. And what my wife always says is, buy American, drink more bourbon. So here
That's
we
a good tagline.
It's a great tagline, I think. Okay, we start out with the cherries.
2 cherries.
2 cherries in
Or a
each
cherry
glass.
each.
Oh, a little orange.
Orange each.
Orange, okay.
A little local Ph.D. bitters.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes. And that you don't use any bitters but those bitters here in New Orleans.
We do use some Angostura from time to time.
Okay.
Because it's a classic.
Just to make it a classic. 2 dashes of those. We're going to give a little splash of simple syrup into each one. Just a smidgen.
Uh-huh. Oh,
Very precise.
Nice. Right? This is going to be nice, I can tell.
Then we're going to muddle these up. Break up everything. Everything starts to blend together. Make sure you get all the flavors out.
Fantastic.
Then,
A little bit. Oh, ice, more ice.
ice.
Ice, and then, yeah.
We are going to choose a little bourbon today.
Well, this is exciting.
Four Roses small batch.
Oh, I've had this
you got
one.
the Four Roses. That's
I
a
have
great
heard of
bourbon.
this one.
Absolutely. It's
My bourbon friend taught me all about the Four Roses.
Yeah. We went a number of years back. We went to a bourbon tasting dinner at GW Finn's in the Quarter,
Oh,
and it was sponsored by Four Roses. So all the bourbon and drinks,
Oh, nice.
really different drinks.
very
It
nice.
was
I
all
think
Four Roses.
she did a
Yeah.
flight for me. I think this was my favorite.
Yeah.
But
Four
she
Roses
remembers
is
better
great.
than I do.
small batch is a good one.
Yeah, I think I had that one.
Yeah, he's giving us the good stuff, you know.
I know. That's what I was like. I think I understand what this is.
Yeah.
Put that on Will's tag.
That's right. Tell him I said thanks.
Absolutely. Y'all. Stir sticks. We don't need Strauss today.
Nah.
Fantastic. Okay.
Oh, wonderful.
And enjoy.
Thank you, my dear friend.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good
or
to
as
be
they
with
say in Germany, Prost.
Oh, sure.
Prost.
Prost.
Yeah.
Oh, that's delicious,
very
Jeff.
nice.
Oh, thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, what we're going to be talking about today is ministry to young adults. It's a very tricky subject in this day and age, believe it or not, but it really is for all sorts of reasons. And Tracey's going to illuminate us rather to what, in terms of what the issues are. And I'm not going to say problems. Matter of fact, I read Tracey's paper on this, and she hates the word problems. She doesn't want us to talk about problems. She wants us to talk about opportunities.
That's right. That's right.
And I agree 110%
Oh,
with
good.
your thesis on this. So instead of asking you what the problems are, I'm going to ask you, what are the issues?
Yeah. So the issues with our Gen Z folks that we're kind of been talking a lot more. Everybody's been talking about millennials for years, and now we're into young adult terms. Gen Z is our youngest young adults now. Millennials are still phasing in and out of the young adult age range. In terms of the Catholic Church, we call young adults anywhere between 18 years old and 39. And so our 18 to 20 something year olds are Gen Zs now. And the reason that I really resist the language of problem is because people have been problematizing young people for a very long time.
Yeah.
And they're not a problem to be solved. They're grace-filled humans to be brought into our lives, you know, and so it's just not helpful to think of people as problems. That's not a helpful thing. It's disparaging to young people. Nobody wants to think of themselves as a problem because of some statistic told somebody that, you know. But there's a lot of issues that are facing ministry leaders in terms of this generation and how to minister. You know, you had mentioned minister to young people, and that's what we've been doing for a long time. And the language is shifting now to ministering with, you know. There's a growing sense of like agency that our young people have that they're struggling to express agency and leadership. They can't find a home for that in their churches, you know, where they can actually do peer-to-peer ministry with their peers, you know, and not finding a lot of avenues for that. Folks in the churches that I work with and know well are doing a lot of programming, a lot of religious ed programming, sacramental prep. Maybe there's a Bible study here and there, but it's usually like Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock when the average person has a job, you know, so that's designed for retirees, you know, not young adults, you know, and so just kind of changing that programming model to really looking at how to support the spirituality and the spiritual needs of young people. And that's a lot of the programs we see in parishes aren't doing that, you know, they're geared towards teens or older adults, you know, and so the folks that are in between that are really struggling to find a home in their churches. And the issues facing ministry leaders, you know, is a lot of going from these old models of you know, whoever signs your paycheck, if it's your bishop, if it's your priest, wants to know how many people you got, you know, how many showed up to this event. And there's a very transient nature of young people, and it's been growing and growing because the economy is not great. They have to move to where jobs are, or maybe they're moving for school or whatever it is, or their spouse or whatever. It's usually jobs that are push and pull factors for our young people. And so a lot of ministry folks are saying, not wanting to invest time in what's a very transient population. And I just think that's a huge mistake. What we're finding with the projects that we are doing with young adults is, more importantly, remembering that you can be a touch point in a person's life. It's not about growing the numbers in your program. It's about being there for the young person that's in your midst and preparing them for their next church that they go to, instead of thinking of your church as the home forever. It's just not the case anymore.
No, and it might not. And the other thing is, we don't know where they're going to go.
No, exactly.
Because they might go to a Roman Catholic church.
They might go somewhere else.
Church. One of the students that a very, very good student at USF, a top student who now has a young entrepreneur who now has a global positioning firm that he has established, has done very well for himself. And he was one of my main students many, many years ago. And he took a number of my classes, and he decided he understands Christianity pretty darn well. He understands historical critical methodology and all of that. But he really decided he was a Buddhist. And my feeling is, as long as that gives him a sense of place, a sense of meaning, a sense of direction, that's fine with me.
Right.
So it's like, you got to help people discover who they are. And from there become as I know it's an old saying, it's kind of a worn out saying, then become the best version of themselves that they can be. And that's not trying to gain people into your church.
That's the thing.
It's not programming.
Yeah.
It's
And that's what I try to caution people, is to say, what is your primary objective? If it's getting butts in pews, and that's the language I typically use, then you're missing the mark. Isn't the goal of all evangelization to get people in greater touch with God, themselves, and others? And if that should, if you do it well, naturally lend someone to a faith community, but not if the faith community has their priorities backwards. If you think attending the church comes first, and people can't actually grow in their spirituality by doing that, then we've got a mismatched, what's happening. So we talk about meeting people where they are, and that's not, some people are traumatized by church, by something that happened to them. There's a lot of church hurt out there.
There's a lot of church hurt
and
out
that
there.
can't be the first thing you say, come to church with me. That won't work with everybody,
Not a good idea.
No, it's but that's a lot of times that's what I hear when I hear people saying like, oh, they're transient, they won't be around. It's like, is that because you want to build your membership in your church, or because you want to build the relationship young people have with God? Because those are not necessarily the same thing. One hopefully leads very beautifully and organically to the next, because we should worship in community. We should have faith communities. But not every community looks that welcoming, and not everybody knows what the community's like. You gotta learn to trust people first, and that takes relationship building.
You gotta trust, and you gotta say this community is here is for mutual support, learning, and growth.
Right.
And we're not going to tell you the answers to things. We're not going to shove doctrine or dogma down your throat. We're going to be open to your questions and your issues, and we're going to explore this together.
Right. Because what's the alternative? Exploring it on your own with Google? Like, that's the alternative. Finding someone that's not a person of faith to talk to about it? You can get any kind of answers with that, but why don't we want to be people of faith accompanying these questions, these big questions? Don't we want to be the ones that are in their lives that they can come to with these questions? And unfortunately, they're not. They see people in the church as just offering classes and programming, and that's it, instead of being relational ministers. And I think that's a big shift in a lot of churches that we've got to start leaning into, is really looking at one-on-one accompaniment. And how do you do that when you're taxed with all the programs in the parish to run? How do you then, so it takes a big shift in innovation and change. And that's something that we're working on with we have a really big Lilly grant to work right now with young adults, parishes, to do young adult ministry. And so that's our goal, is to try and work on that.
$1.5 Lilly grant, which for Lilly is a big,
huge. It's
that's
huge.
a huge,
one of the big
grant.
ones.
And what are sorts of things you're doing with that grant?
So what my desire was all of these thoughts that I have about young people. I have been, in the last 6-ish years, really profound groups that have been working on what we call in the Catholic Church synodality, or just listening. So kind of 3 things mark synodality: encountering one another, listening deeply, and discerning together the fruits of the Spirit. And so we've been in the groups, the national young adult groups that I've been with, were years ago designing a process, because we knew the Synod on Young People was coming. We know synodality. We know, and we're hearing from young people that they're not being listened to. That was like the number one thing in a survey that went out in like 2018. They said the church doesn't care about our needs. So what do we do?
Why don't you explain synodality? Because a lot of people aren't going to understand.
Well,
that
it's
term.
just, to me, it's about listening. It's a whole way of being church. There are some folks that thought of it as more data collection, in terms of like listening and hearing what's on the hearts and minds of people in terms of what they want for your churches, for their faith and their churches. Some people took that as data collection and thought, we'll send this off to Rome, we've done our job. In my experience, this does profound things. If you can have a non-threatening, safe environment where people can say what is on their hearts and their minds about their life of faith, and no fixing, no saving, no judging, just listening, and then taking time to process what you heard and discern prayerfully what your next faithful steps are. To me, that's a way of being church. And that's what Pope Francis is saying, that synodality is an ecclesiology. It's a way of being church. So how do we make change in our churches? Listen first. That's what he's saying.
What is the hope for this going forward? Because I know Francis has a different style of episcopate than other popes have had prior to him. I always say the other popes were dominical and hierarchical, while Francis is pastoral and conciliatory. And the thing is, what's the hope to keep the pastoral and the conciliar style of episcopate moving forward in Roman Catholicism? Because I think that is significant. That is important.
I mean, there's a hemorrhaging from our churches. You know, people in all parts of the world, mostly the global north.
Not only from the Roman Catholicism.
No, exactly.
I mean, I can point to the same thing. I'm Protestant. I can point to the same thing.
I read all the news
Protestant
on that.
Churches.
Yep.
I just got back from Europe. I was in Prague a few years ago.
Yeah.
And Prague, they miscategorize a lot of people. They say they're about 25% atheists.
Yeah.
What I found was, what they are spiritual seekers. And
that's usually the case.
I talked to a lot of the people in the Czech Republic, and it was like, I want to believe in something.
Right.
I don't know what it is.
Right.
And I can't believe what I've been fed.
Yes.
So where do I go from here?
Yes, exactly. And that's that would be what synodality should do, is to hear from someone like that and say, what can we do together? But for me, synodality, like these listening sessions, I've been a part of a lot, and I facilitate a lot of them. I'm a part of them with young adults and other people, not even just young adults, just anyone that wants to do this work.
So that's part of what the grant does.
It is. Okay. And for me, it has been the formation, these powerful listening sessions is the formation, first of all, of a small Christian community. So now you have let go of what's on your heart and on your mind, and you have said it out loud to people that are with you in your faith community. Small group, I'm talking like 6 people. You can't do a listening session with more than 7 or 8 people. It's just too much, because no one will have time to share. You'll be there for 10 hours. You can do it, but it's not smart.
I hear what you're saying. Absolutely.
And then when I've done this, people have come back. When we do our discernment, we come back together. And one of the gentlemen in one of my groups said, I just want to remind you all that you're all on my heart and mind since our last session. Everything that you shared, I've been praying for all of you. And I thought to myself immediately, this is community. This is what Christian community is. This is what we're missing in our churches. You can't call it a faith community if it's just a loose gathering of people that come together because they're Catholic. That's not community. Community is where you're seen, you're known, you're valued, and you know that you belong. And that's, one of the young adults recently said to me in a listening session for the grant, she said, I just feel like you can just ghost the church. And ghosting is this thing that young people talk about, older people too, about like you go on a date and you think it went well and you absolutely never hear from the person ever again and you never hear why. And that's like, you've been ghosted, And she said, you can just ghost your church and no one will know if you show up. No one will know if you don't show up. And I was like, yeah, that's not community. In community, you're seen and known and valued. And so there's a real disconnect between what it means to go to church and feel seen and known and belonging. And that's where synodality, I feel, can really change that for our churches, to have communities of communities, So we designed the grant around these experiences that I've had working with young people, working with ministry leaders to do these deep listening sessions. And so there's no program that's gonna help you do ministry with young adults. You must talk to your young adults. And so we're teaching people how to do listening sessions, how to, the extroverts like myself and the teachers like myself like to help and fix and be like, oh, you have a problem, let me help you. Oh, you just shared this, let me say whatever. You don't do this in listening. So this is like against the grain for us extroverts,
I'm right there with you.
Exactly. The amount of times I've been in a listening session and been like, nope, not your turn. You're just listening, because when you go to respond, now it's your voice in the mix and now you've changed the narrative, and the longer you hold silence in these sessions, the more people feel comfortable to speak, and you're not supposed to say a word,
now, sometimes I find though, for authenticity purposes, if we're talking about a profound spiritual experience, which a lot of people have and they never talk about.
Right.
I find that sometimes the way to get the discussion started is share my own.
Yes.
And that means that you're opening up and you're vulnerable.
Yep.
You're saying, I'm opening up, I'm willing to share something that is unbelievably deeply personal to me.
Yeah.
And there it is. I'm not saying you have to do the same thing. You don't. If you don't want to share it, you don't have to.
Right.
But if you feel like it would be helpful for you to share, we're here, and you can see you're not the only one doing it.
Right.
So you don't feel like you're out there on some limb that's about to be sawed off.
I know, because the vulnerability aspect of this is the biggest thing, and the dynamics in this group change, especially if your pastor is there and he signs your paycheck. Can you be vulnerable and authentic in front of him? You might not be able to. Or if you're a director of religious ed and you have a bunch of young adults there, can they be vulnerable in front of you? All these dynamics have to be well thought through. We're not just throwing people into a room and say, be vulnerable. No. It's not going to work. The invitation is key, the hospitality, the power dynamics of who are in that room. These are all very serious things to be attentive to. And so we're teaching our parish. We have 7 parishes right now. We're doing 3 iterative cohorts. So we have a current group of 4 to 6 parishes 3 different times. So right now we took 7. We broke our own rule and took an extra one. They're all around the country. In California and Ohio, we have one here, Chicago, Arizona, and Colorado Springs.
Are you ecumenical at all?
This one, because we're running it through Loyola, it's Catholic, but I think there's 12 institutions that got this round of grants. They did this in 2016, Lily did. I believe there was only one Catholic institution, that St. Meinrad, they got the grant in 2016. I think we are one of 2 Catholic institutions. So the other ones are not Catholic and they have grants, so theirs are maybe more ecumenical than ours are.
Some of the same.
Yeah. So there's a whole host of us doing different. We're going back to Indianapolis in October to see, after a year of the first year of having the grant, to see how everybody's doing. And I'm really excited to go and see how the other organizations have been doing, and to just kind of compare, because it's hard. Changing people towards, synodality as a way of church is a tremendous institutional change, in the way that we're used to doing things. So we have our work cut out for us.
A massive paradigm shift.
It's huge that you're going to actually go encounter people that are not a part of your fold, that you're going to listen to them and discern what to do and invite them back into more conversation,
And this also means being open to a kind of postmodern perspective relative to the church.
Because it's process.
Which a lot of people would consider to be almost an oxymoron.
Yeah.
So you want to speak to a little about that?
This is the most unsettling thing about this is that it's process-based. So, which means you're not going to know the outcome. You can't, because you don't know what people are going to say. And so that's unnerving. And that's where you really have to practice great discernment. And when I go to these sessions and I write down what everyone says, there's themes that come out, very strong themes, particular to that community, that only that community can deal with. You know, I can't tell, oh, this is what was said in this listening session, you should try that. It would never work. So it's very, very intentional to who your people are and the responsiveness of your community. And it, you know, that whole postmodern idea, it's true. This is, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the modern way of doing things was very linear, very, there were objectives and goals and all that kind of stuff. And that's like an old way of the old curriculum theory too.
You're an academic, I'm an academic. Our institutions are still
we're all stuck in it.
Stuck in that.
Stuck in the modern, sometimes pre-modern. Yeah. But what this is asking for is an openness to transformation. And that's, in curriculum theory, we call it chaos theory. I mean, this is chaos theory, you know, and that's what I love about it, because if it translates so well to teaching and learning to me, because if you're truly teaching and learning at the same time, then you're open to what emerges in the classroom. You know, like that I'm not the sage on the stage. The wisdom is curated throughout the way the lesson is developed.
I remember back over 50 years ago when I was in seminary, we used to call that an emergent design.
Oh, it's emergent curriculum. That's exactly what it is.
That's what you want, isn't
it? Not based on Newtonian physics, but based on new physics, new science, and chaos theory.
Yeah.
And not everybody's comfortable with that, because the word chaos is in there, you know. But it is, and that's what all of this is. It's emergent process, you know, and that's why people that need objectives and standards and outcomes and numbers aren't going to be comfortable with synodality. And also, I'll just be honest, not everyone wants to be vulnerable. People are not sharing their stories well. That's the biggest challenge with our ministry leaders. Young adults can't see themselves in a church where no one's authentically sharing their story. And I'm not talking banging on doors and witnessing. I'm talking, if you're grieving, share how you've grieved and how your faith might have helped you. Like, can you tell a story about that? Can you tell a story of a time when you fell away from the church and someone helped you to come back? Like, those are the stories we're not sharing with our young people.
Can you tell us about a time when you were deep in grief?
Yeah.
And something happened that allowed you to overcome that, to be real resilient in the midst of that. That sort of thing is what we're talking about.
And they're not hearing that. They're just either looking at a textbook or being told, here's the doctrine.
Yeah.
By a person that's not sharing with them why they're a person of faith, you know?
I see. Do not, absolutely do not shove doctrine and dogma down their throat.
No, where is it going to get you?
It's going to get you absolutely.
It's getting us where we are today, which is people leaving the churches.
Exactly. So, what's the definition of crazy? It is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for a better result.
Expecting different results. Exactly.
I don't think so.
Exactly.
I mean, it's.
That's where I'm hoping synodality breaks through, cuts this insanity, you know, cuts the revolving door of the programming and wondering why. It's a lot of navel gazing, you know, instead of and blaming. You're like, oh, these people are just too busy for church. It's like, do you know that? Have you ever talked to them? Is that what they say? Like what I hear ministry leaders say about their young parents, you know, that aren't bringing their kids to church. They're like, oh, they don't put God first. And I'm like, that's a horrible thing to think of people.
That's crazy.
Did they tell you that?
Crazy. It's
or do you just assume that?
Where are you basing those assumptions on?
Exactly. Because if you actually sit and talk with a young parent and ask them what's on their hearts and minds in a non-threatening way and telling them they will not be judged, and sometimes that doesn't work, so you've got to build relationships, they're not going to say they don't put God first. And they're going to say they're busy and they don't know how to manage it all. I don't know what they're going to say. You got to ask them, you know. But like these assumptions we're making about why people are leaving the church are distancing us from the actual people leaving our churches. That's where synodality can change things.
It becomes a blame game.
Yep. And I ain't got time for it.
Absolutely horrendous.
It is that this is how we think of people in our churches. It's cruel.
It is.
Yeah.
I've just recently, and I mean very recently, came upon some information relative to another epoch. You know, like we've been in the modern epoch.
Yeah.
Now we're in the postmodern epoch.
Yep.
And this is called the metamodern epoch. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I have not. Do tell.
There have been people writing about this, I guess, for about the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that is associated with the post with the modern epoch is its positivism.
Oh, right.
Like
Yeah.
we've got all the answers, and you know the scientific method is going to solve
Right.
all our human problems. No, it's not.
Right. Right.
And that's the postmodern critique of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the problem with postmodernism, it can lead to relativism and nihilism.
And total deconstruction.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't, so okay, now you've deconstructed everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that leave
Right.
us with?
It leaves us with nothing.
Well,
yeah.
the idea of metamodernism is it's in between the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's basically saying, yeah, there are some good things that modernism has done. There
For
are
sure,
some
yeah.
positive accomplishments that we can look forward to,
Right.
where we can say, we can kind of check the box, if you want. At least tentatively check the box. And the critique of modernism vis-a-vis postmodernism has taken the problems of postmodernism, the deficiencies not of postmodernism, the deficiencies of modernism, very seriously, and provided an authentic a critique
Yeah.
of modernism.
Yeah.
But what we need is something kind of in between
Yeah.
that says we have to have a serious critique. We just can't go forward
Into
with
nothing.
positivistic bluster.
Right. Right. Right.
But at the same time, we need to have something that we can build upon that is solid.
I would
when
say
you
there's two big things of postmodernism that is practical that church people could get.
Yeah.
And that is the end of meta-narratives and the distrust of institutions. That's what we're seeing today. Meta-narratives are this overarching story that's going to tell you what's true. And what people don't want that. And that's what they find when they go to a
Well,
big
they don't
church.
believe it
Well, because it's not relational.
because it's not relational.
That's why
And they
one-on-one
don't believe it.
ministry is
The
big.
thing is, they don't believe it relates.
Well, because it doesn't relate to their lives.
It doesn't relate to their
Yeah.
lives, so they don't believe it in terms of the church.
Yeah.
They also don't believe it in terms of science.
Right, right. It's true. It's true.
Because the church and science are both caught up in that modernistic
Yeah.
approach
Yeah,
to
yeah.
understanding.
Yeah, yeah.
And postmodernism gives us a great critique of that.
Right, which is a healthy critique
Yeah.
because life is found in the micro narrative.
Yeah.
Life is found in the day to day.
Yeah.
But you can't do that if you're not willing to share authentically who you are, you know. So that I think that's a good thing. And then the distrust of institutions is huge. Church is an institution. You know, so the only way to get over these two big things, which we have known have been coming for a long time, postmodern, you know, trends, is relational ministry, is
Which
relationships.
is also then,
you know,
in my opinion, pluralistic.
yeah,
It's a pluralistic perspective.
Yeah.
And if one of my favorite, no longer considered a Roman Catholic theologian, I still consider him one of the greatest Roman Catholic theologians of the 20th century, and that was Hans Kung, did in 1993, is he called together the Second World Parliament of Religion. And I always said, you know, the First World Parliament of Religion was held in Chicago in 1893 in conjunction with the Columbian Exposition. And as I said, they thought it was such a great idea that they decided to do it again exactly 100 years later.
yeah,
When nobody who was at the original parliament would be at the second. But since then, there have been many of those world parliaments. And the difference between what Kuhn was doing and what was going on previously, in the previous world parliament in 1893, it was like, we're going to have this world parliament of religions, and we're going to invite all of these other religions. We know ours. We know Christianity is the best. I mean, that was the way it was conducted.
yeah,
Where Kung didn't do that.
right,
It's like, you all come now. I mean, you all come, and about 5,000 people showed up.
yeah,
And we're going to honestly consider everybody's perspective at an equal level, and then we're going to work toward a global ethos. And we're going to do that in such a fashion that it's an ongoing, again, process.
yeah.
It's not that we're coming up with a document that we're setting in stone. What we're coming up with is a way to proceed into the 21st century. And I appreciated Kung so much on that.
yeah,
And if there's a beacon of hope out there, it's that.
yeah,
It's that
Yeah.
interfaith
Yeah.
interaction,
Yeah.
which says, y'all come, we love y'all, you're all accepted, you all got great perspectives.
yeah,
And, you know, I teach, I'm probably speaking too much here, but I teach comparative religion.
Right, right.
And everybody says, well, you're teaching us about good things in all these religions. Why are you Christian? And I say, 2 reasons I'm a Christian. Once, I think I see there's truth in it. Not the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but there is truth in it. And second, it works for me.
Yeah, right. That's right.
So the issue is, what works for you?
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I think one of the books I use in my youth and young adult ministry, it's got a long title. It's Faith Development and Spiritual Development for Youth and Young Adults, whatever the name of that course is. And I teach it every other summer. And I use a book by Ibu Patel, who created the Interfaith Youth Corps. He's gone, to do more with adults these days, I think. I don't follow him as much as I used to. But his book, he's an American Muslim growing up in Chicago, and it's just the story of a young person finding themselves. And it's just the way he can tell his story about his own life and his own spirituality and his longing for community. It's powerful and palatable. And that developed for him all of these scenarios he was in his life, helped him realize that the only way to come together for him, in one of the most powerful ways to come together with people of other faith traditions, was to have a focus on service or something, just to have a common bond. There's good. Can you imagine the good we could put in the world if we worked together as people of faith, of any tradition, with a common goal of bringing good to the world, and however that looks for your community. I read, when I was in graduate school at Fordham University, we read, I can't remember the name of the course, but either way, it was probably an ethics course. We read a book by Jeffrey Stout, and he's a journalist, and it was called Blessed Are the Organized. And he was going through the country following community organizers, like Saul Alinsky's type stuff, industrial area foundations, IAF, Foundation, right. And we had them here, and he actually traced the two groups, Jeremiah and Isaiah, I think, here in New Orleans, around Katrina, and he was interviewing folks then. And there was St. Rose of Lima Parish, I think he was at, which has closed since then. But in any case, what I took from his book was primarily that he looked at all these different states, cities that he was looking at community organizing, and he said the ones that were the most successful were the ones that got churches on board, which means look at the power of our churches to affect change.
We have that here in New Orleans with Together New Orleans.
Yeah.
Yeah. They haven't fully embraced Alinsky yet, although Alinsky's supposed to be their model.
Yeah,
they haven't really completely embraced it.
Okay. Yeah, but it was a testimony of what our churches can do, good in the world,
It's interesting. One of the things that led President Obama to become a Christian and to join a church was his involvement as a community organizer in Chicago.
Yep.
And where the Alinsky model was basically created in Chicago.
Right.
And he became a member of Trinity United Church of Christ, where Jeremiah Wright was the pastor.
Yeah.
Side note, I know Jerry pretty well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we came up as I can't believe I was ever a young Turk. I'm 76 years old.
Right. When were we young?
But we came up as young Turks together in the United Church of Christ in Chicago way back when.
Yeah.
But the reason he was attracted to that church is he saw the power of church in relation to what he was doing as a community organizer.
Right. Imagine if more of our young people, some of them, there was a lot of talks I've been to with people that do more direct ministry with young people. And one of the gatherings I was at, one of the speakers said, our young people got on a bus, and they went to Ferguson, they went and they protested, and they came home, they got off that bus and they thought, I don't know a single church that I can go to and express what I've been through. And it just made me crumble inside that we're somehow disconnecting our spirituality.
We've got one right across the street here.
Yeah. This was somewhere else, but either way, yeah. And it just, where's the disconnect between social justice and spirituality? They should be united, but a lot of young people, folks that I know working at the Catholic Work here have expressed that there's young people that want to do good and don't want to do anything as a person of faith. They said, I don't understand why you need to be a person of faith to do good. So they're actually seeing the opposite of that, So like we have our work cut out for us as people of faith to, we've got a bad branding image. Like we can do so much good, and we're doing a really bad job getting that message out, I think.
The only, I would say, you can do incredible good without being a person of faith.
True. Yes, you can. But man, can it enhance you?
But the thing the community gives you, the
That's
thing
right.
the faith community
That's
gives
right.
you, it helps with your inevitable burnout.
That's right. That's right.
Because there's only so much of that you're going to do before you collapse.
Yeah.
Unless you got a supportive community.
Yep.
That can buoy you up.
Yep. That's 100% true.
So that's what it does.
It does.
Well, we could go on and on and on. I know we could go on and on.
I think we could.
I love talking about these things.
I do
I know
too.
you
Thank
and I
you.
share some of the exact same perspectives on these.
Yes.
And but maybe another time or another way, we'll continue this and maybe find some ways to engage practically with one another.
That would be lovely.
Okay.
That would be delightful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for coming to my favorite watering
that's
hole.
how this bar was chosen. I said, Dr. Lamont, Tracey, what's your favorite bar? And she said, Carrollton Station.
That's
That's
right.
my hangout. I said, well, in that case, we're going to have to get in contact with the folks there and set it up to do Scholars in a Bar.
It worked out
At
perfectly.
Carrollton Station. So thank you very much.
Well, cheers, my friend. This was a joy.
Prost. And so, until next time, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Scholars in a Bar.